Welcome to The Drill Down, in-depth answers to oil field questions. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.
And I was knowing that this is our part two of a two-part series. That last week we talked about net zero. So, John, for the customers, what was the main point?
Last week was Climate Summit Week, and President Biden has used that meeting to announce some goals to reduce carbon emissions here in the U.S. So we were talking about what those emission reductions might be, and just in general how that fit into the whole notion that under enhanced climate change policies, what that might mean toward oil and gas and operators drilling and completion decisions. And so this week, I think we want to talk about sort of how those long-term expectations are affecting sort of current field practices, at least here in the U.S.
Well, right, because if in a world of net zero, the view of the oil and gas industry is that any investment that you make is a short-term investment rather than a medium-term or long-term.
Right.
Everything is done for the short term.
That's right. Demand won't be growing, and in fact might turn down, and so
it might have already turned down. Now, you don't have to agree with it.
Yeah, right.
You don't have to agree with that statement, but if that's the way the investors and the world are viewing the industry, then that's the way the industry is going to behave.
Right. You don't want to be caught with stranded assets, right? Assets that you've invested in and there's no market for. Right?
And so if the investors and if the industry has to behave as if it's a short-term investment horizon, and we're talking 2 years, 3 years, it's just short, then how are you going to behave?
Right.
And so today we're going to talk about what we're observing in the industry and the behavior of the industry and why it makes complete sense when you're talking about a world of the assumption of net zero.
That's right. Yeah. Because there's a couple elements to that. A, how much are you going to spend? And then once you've come up with that number, how are you going to spend it? What are you going to spend it on?
What are you going to spend it on?
Exactly, right.
And
I should say, too, we talk about demand going down, stranded assets, but there's within that a notion that oil prices, commodity prices, would be weak, right? If demand is not growing and there's plenty of supply, then. So there's sort of two elements to this whole notion of, boy, I better be cautious about how much I spend, and then I need to think hard about how I'm going to spend it, because I want to minimize that investment.
Because what we're facing is an industry that right now is driving the real engineers, the great engineers of the oil industry. It's driving them nuts because of the decisions that are being made at the management level about how to develop fields, how to drill the wells, how to complete the wells.
Right.
Is in many times contrary to what you would do or what you've been trained to do for the last 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years to in many ways complete a well.
Yeah. So, okay.
Sand.
So give us an example.
Here's an example.
Okay.
Cheap and cheerful.
Okay.
In fact, that's really just the rule of the day. Cheap and cheerful. Drill it fast, which means cheap. Frack it even cheaper.
Okay.
So drill it fast and cheap means this. I drill it fast so I don't worry about exactly where the well bore is going, and I sure as heck don't log the thing. I don't gather any information about it, or I don't spend any time in analysis. I just get the hole pretty close.
So we think of a well bore as being straight, but it's not. And especially if you drill it, the faster you drill it, it more likely becomes a corkscrew down the road.
That's right.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of issues that might mean on the production end and so forth. Yeah.
So just get that thing drilled fast. And then on the completion side, whereas, the one thing I actually used to do as an engineer was design frac jobs.
Yes.
Look at rock.
Right.
Look at what's the best thing for cracking the rock open and propping the rock open. So I actually know a little bit about rock mechanics.
Right.
And if you study it that way, then what you're going to do is you're going to put a expensive high-strength proppant into your well below 10,000 feet vertical.
Okay.
Or you're going to put a pure sand with a uniform grain size in there, and that's going to hold the crack open that you create.
Sure.
Everything will be optimized, but instead, in a world of cheap and cheerful, you hit it hard. You just use the minimum of chemistry in the water that you're going to pump. You're going to use the cheapest water you can, produced water. So a slick water frac, and then you're not going to worry at all about the sand.
So I'm not going to be concerned about grain size and things like that, right?
Or even grade or grain size.
Okay.
In the past, I would have looked at a uniform sand type that would have flowed neatly out of whatever I put it in.
Right.
Now I'm not even going to bother drying it or grade or checking the size.
Right.
Here's a big range. It's okay with me. Bring it out wet.
So again, a lot of our listeners are not completion engineers. So, for example, on proppant selection and handling and so forth, right? You bringing out dry sand to location, right? It has been mined, and then it has been washed, I presume, to remove impurities. It's wet, and then it goes through a drying process, or at least that's been.
You use a lot of natural gas. Dry that thing out to where it's once again. It looks like golf course sand,
right?
100 mesh. That is free flowing,
right.
And
then you put it into, or at least the way it's been delivered to location has been in big boxes, I guess, these days, right?
Well, a big box or a pneumatic trailer that blows it up into a silo or loads it into some, elevated something or other.
Okay, so if I'm now saying, okay, that was the old way. I want to save costs. I'm going to use wet sand. So what does that mean?
Can't bring it out a pneumatic trailer anymore, or put it in a silo because it won't blow up into the.
So I mine it, but I don't dry it. There's no washing, there's no drying process at all, right?
I put it in a box and I haul that box out to the well site.
Okay.
And that wet sand just dumps out of, clumpy,
right.
But it dumps out right into the blender auger or hopper.
Okay. Right.
And I mean, the sand ends up wet anyway, right? But it's the quality of the sand and how it flows into that hopper that matters. That's or used to matter.
You can't, for example, you can't screen wet sand like you can dry, right? So the type of sand, the grain sizes that show up, is a much broader range than what it used to be under a dry sand process.
And for example, if you went through all of that grading process and washing and drying, and at the mine gate, it could have been $30 or $40 or $50 a ton.
Okay.
But if you don't do any of that, maybe it's $10 or $20 a ton. So you, the buyer of the frac sand, you're saving half the price, or more, on just buying whatever you scoop off the ground and rinse off.
Yep.
Okay. Now that's way oversimplification because I'm no longer a frac engineer, but that's the way you get it. And
this is a savings that amounts to several $100,000.
It could save $1 million on a well. So huge amount of savings.
Right. So again, the thought is, okay, great. We've drilled that well. We've now fracked it. It probably won't produce as well as it would have had we taken a more, engineered approach. It might not produce. It might produce as much on day one, but
sure, you're right.
Yeah.
But it's day 100 that really begins to matter, and day 300 and 700.
Yeah, right. So this it does achieve the goal of lowering your initial cost, but the implications for what might happen to production down the road suggests that things are going to end up not looking as good as what they do when you take this engineered approach, right?
Well, yeah, and you and I have at somewhere along there learned about net present value calculations. And the net present value is very roughly, what does something cost you today?
Right.
And what sort of revenue are you going to get from that investment over an arc of time?
Yes.
Really rough, minus the cost related to getting that stuff out of the ground. Right. And so a net present value calculation in this case, where you're using wet sand, if that's our analogy, is our present cost is low.
Oh yeah, and maybe 20-25% lower perhaps than the other way. Right?
So maybe it's the best net present value to use wet sand. I just don't get as much out of the resource.
Right.
But because my cost is so much lower,
it has a higher net present value, and so that's why I'm doing it this way. Yeah. So
and if my investors don't want me spending a lot of money on drilling the well, mission accomplished. Drives the great engineers nuts. Yeah. Because it really isn't the best way or the right way that we've been taught, absent the economics.
Right. Yes.
But if that's what the reward is.
I remember then one observation that has been held for a long time is that in Norway, for example, they take the long term. They took the life cycle view of costs, and said, oh, well, in order to minimize that long, tail of operating costs, let's spend more money up front in getting a well drilled and completed properly and so forth.
Gold plate the thing.
Yeah, and it makes sense in that environment because, again, they're drilling offshore in waters that can be tough to get to and operate in. So they don't want to get out there very often and fix a well if something goes wrong, right? So, this life cycle cost approach makes a lot of sense when you have limited access or there's operational difficulties in servicing a well. Now, you're in West Texas, what's to stop you from driving up to location, right? So it is a different physical situation, and that plays into this kind of mindset that, well, maybe we, save on the upfront cost and, live with a higher operating cost down the road, or just abandon the well earlier in its life, right?
What we've just described is very specific to a U.S. operation, but you and I have a bunch of clients in the Middle East, and what's to prevent them from driving right up to a well that's being drilled or being completed?
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, even now, already we've seen, given the downturn of the past year, that operators aren't spending as much in exploration. And we've said, well, great, why explore for new reserves when the ones you've already discovered may be sufficient given that demand outlook that people are talking about. So clearly engineers are having to adjust to a different approach, and the service firms themselves are being asked to handle a different type of operation, right? That's just something they're going to, a fact of life out there right now.
Last time I checked, it's not the engineers that are running the oil companies. They used to, but now it's very much run by the economics of the whole, of the environment that you're working in.
Right.
So therefore, I think that we are stuck first in the United States,
right,
now in the Middle East, and already in Russia and China. This is the way the operations are.
Right.
So until another inflection point occurs, because...
Well, yes. So that actually suggests that there's a third part to this two-part episode.
That's right.
And that is
part 3 of our two-part series.
How likely is it? How long might this short-term mindset last? Right?
Because what if they're wrong?
Yeah. So there's some things we can talk about here. What are the great uncertainties that might mean that this consensus view is incorrect? Right.
And when has the consensus view ever been wrong in the past?
No, I agree. I think that's worthwhile. So I think we're going to pick up and run with that here in the not too distant future.
So next week when we come back, we'll do part 3 of the two-part series, and that time it'll be called something like "What if we're wrong?" or "What if they're wrong?"
What if they're wrong? Yeah, and I think it's got two aspects to it. One is what if the demand outlook's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Secondly is what if the price expectations are too low, right? If you're conservative, you think it's going to be a weak price environment for oil and gas. What if that's wrong? So there's a couple different things, and I'm curious to hear what it's going to.
I'm already excited about part 3 because I'm more inclined to believe what I think our part 3 is going to believe than the current environment. But this is what you see is what you get.
Well, we'll have a lot of caveats, ifs, ands, or buts. But
all right.
In the meantime,
what are people waiting for?
They're anxious to hear the answer to last week's puzzler.
And do you remember at all what last week's puzzler question was?
You were at a dance, my mind stops right there. I can't imagine.
And the question was, my wife had observed at a big high society dance that 350 people were on the dance floor, and that there were twice as many women as children, and twice as many children as men.
And so the question was, how many men are out there? Right?
And we were very impressed by the sheer number of people who got the answer right.
Yeah, I think our audience is getting better at math questions. So,
I think they are. And even though I had already picked, actually, one of my friends, I was going to award him until today's answer came
Well, let's
in.
hear the one that
so the answer is 50 men.
50 men, yes.
And so that's
50
the
men,
correct answer.
100 children, 200 women. So 300 people.
350.
350, I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah. So the correct answer is from Don. Now I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. I pronounce everybody, but it's spelled Rutz. Roots. Right at Dawn Roots, you win, and you win primarily because of the following answer.
Let's hear it.
Here's Dawn's complete answer. The simple answer is 50 men were present. So he got the answer right. But then he wrote, however, does this account for the many men who were in the hotel bar watching sports on TV? And with a women to men ratio of 4-to-1, will somebody please let me know in advance when this family's next wedding takes place so I can crash it in order to take advantage of, quote, all the love that's in the air with all these dateless women. So at any rate, congratulations, Dawn. You win this
If
one.
I remember correctly, that dance you're at was in Arkansas, right? Yeah. And in Arkansas, I think a big wedding is just considered a chance to meet girls. So,
or relatives.
Relatives, yeah.
Oh, wait, same thing. Anyway, that's the Drill Down. Thanks for listening to the Drill Down. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John.